Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this very special program today. This is one of our fireside chats, and my name's Lisa Levinson. I am the campaigns director for In Defense of Animals, and it's my special pleasure to introduce you to our elephant campaign consultant, Courtney Scott, who will be introducing you to our program today and to our special featured guest.
Thank you, Lisa. So I wanted to welcome everybody to our special presentation, which is called Wild in a Walled World, the Challenges and Triumphs of Rewilding Elephants in South Africa. And I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Brett Mitchell, Chair of the Elephant Reintegration Trust in South Africa, with over 25 years of experience working with both wild and captive elephants. Brett has also been instrumental in developing ethical wildlife tourism, and he's known as an expert in his field of rewilding elephants. Brett also has a deep understanding of the problems with captive elephant breeding and how it contributes to and promotes the captivity industry. So we are deeply grateful to Brett for lending us his expertise for our efforts to ban captive breeding here in the US. So right now I'd want to welcome Brett for a wonderful, exciting, and illuminating presentation about rewilding elephants.
Good evening. Thanks, Courtney.
You're so welcome.
All right. Be 2 seconds, everyone. Great. Thank you again, Courtney, for the introduction. It's great to be here. Um, for those just joining, good evening again. I'm Brett Mitchell, chairperson of the Elephant Reintegration Trust and a director of Wild Choices, which are two non-profit organizations in South Africa. This evening, I'll be speaking about rewilding captive elephants back into the wild, into wild ecosystems, and how this restores their autonomy. Before we begin, I'd like to share some background on my journey with elephants and on how the Elephant Reintegration Trust came into being. My work with captive elephants began in 1996, and for the first 18 years, I worked in the tourism industry. Over the past 11 years, that work has evolved into a focus on rewilding elephants, conducting research, and advocating for an end to elephant captivity. I've always believed that elephants belong in the wild. This led me to a life-changing decision to help ensure that the elephants that I had the privilege of working with could live wild again. This took several years to achieve, for the vision to become a reality. The successful rewilding of those elephants became the catalyst for founding the Elephant Reintegration Trust and marked the beginning of a journey that continues to this day. Since 2015, ERT has achieved what many believed was not possible, the successful reintegration of 17 captive elephants back into the wild. Since formally establishing the trust in 2017, we have also rescued 8 wild elephants, assisted with 5 translocation operations, and fitted more than 10 elephants with GPS collars for research and monitoring purposes. In addition to our rescue and operational work, ERT has monitored more than 200 elephants across 9 reserves in South Africa for research and has published six research articles in peer-reviewed journals since 2022. And since 2024, ERT has presented at 2 international conferences and established a research collaboration with South African national parks. I'm extremely fortunate to have a small yet exceptional and dedicated team of trustees and researchers all working tirelessly to create a better future for elephants. Now that I've introduced ERT and the work we do, I'll continue sharing how 2 captive elephant groups were successfully reintegrated into the wild. What do we actually mean when we talk about rewilding? It can be broken down into 3 key stages or referred to as the 3 R's: rehabilitation, reintegration, and rewilding. Rehabilitation is the treatment and care of an injured, orphaned, or sick elephant who requires veterinary care to be physically fit for the reintegration process and eventual rewilding. Reintegration is the process of humans disengaging intensive management of previously captive elephants, reinstating autonomy with full freedom of choice whilst correcting unwanted behaviors to allow for transitioning back into a completely wild system. Rewilding is the release of reintegrated elephants into a wild system without any interference by humans, in which the elephant has full autonomy. The time frame for any of these stages is guided by the elephant's own readiness and progression. So why should we rewild? At a holistic level, elephants simply do not thrive in captivity. They are not suited to a captive lifestyle. By rewilding elephants and affording them the freedom to live autonomously, we not only improve their individual well-being, but also make a meaningful contribution to the conservation of the species, something captivity does not. My decision to rewild the rewilding of this first group of elephants was shaped by the direction in which the captive industry was developing in South Africa. Whilst it was far from perfect, it was becoming increasingly troubling. Numerous accidents were occurring, elephant handlers were losing their lives, and tourists were being injured. To bolster the industry in South Africa, from around 2004 to 2013, wild elephants were being captured purely for commercial gain under the false pretext of saving them. In reality, family groups were torn apart, and in some cases, the adults were shot to create so-called orphans. Also, I did not want anyone under my watch to become a statistic, and the elephants I worked with deserved the opportunity to live as they should. Wild. In South Africa, rewilding has already and 20 elephants successfully reintegrated into various reserves over the years. Despite this progress, just shy of 90 elephants held in captivity. In captivity. There are two rewilding journeys that I'll be sharing this evening. The first one is especially close to my heart, as I've been with these elephants since 1996, and I've always felt personally responsible for their future. Just to touch briefly on the history, the adult elephants were captured as 2 to 4-year-olds in 1988 during one of the many culling operations that took place during the 70s and 80s in Zimbabwe. In 1996, they entered the tourism industry and were used for elephant-back safaris near Victoria Falls. In 2002, they were moved to the 500-hectare Letsatsing Game Park in South Africa, bordering the Pilanesberg National Park. When I started rewilding the elephants, the adults had spent more than 25 years in captivity. The commercial operation known as Pilanesberg Elephant-back Safaris came to an end in June 2014, thereabouts. The first step was to secure a reserve where the elephants could be rewilded. Although I had investigated a number of options, I knew that they needed to go to I knew the place that they needed to go, and that was a reserve called Kalahari Reserve. Achieving that outcome, however, took many months of discussion, particularly as these elephants would become the founding population on the reserve. Kamup is the second largest private reserve in South Africa, spanning over 90,000 hectares. With virtually no tourism and conservation its priority, it made it the perfect location. When reflecting back now, I realized just how high I'd actually set the bar for the first rewilding that I did. The reserve's remoteness and sheer size made it extremely challenging. However, without a doubt, it was the best place for the elephants. In typical government style, obtaining the permits took nearly a year to finalize. As frustrating as the delay was, it actually gave us valuable time to begin working through key reintegration processes before the translocation took place. After the commercial operation closed, the elephants' daily routine changed along many aspects of their management. The elephants were able to feed out in the park from sunup to sundown, and we used this to expose them to various situations that they would likely encounter once rewilded, such as vehicle encounters. In July 2015, as we progressed with certain aspects of the reintegration, I made the decision to start leaving the elephants out at night on the park to observe what they would do. We left their night enclosures open with food inside of them in case they returned for the night. As the GPS collars or satellite tracking collars were already made up for the translocation, we fitted them to the elephants. This allowed us to monitor their movements via a laptop throughout the night for safety and security reasons. Due to the size of the park and the area where we left them each night, the elephants were a mere 10-minute walk from their stables. They, however, chose to stay out and did not return once during the night to their stables throughout this whole period, which was close to 7 weeks. Every morning, we would join the elephants for the day and continue our various practice sessions with them. Finally, in August 2015, then all the necessary permits were issued and we'd arranged the logistics and we departed for the reserve on the 9th of September. We had built a 2-hectare holding boma to serve as the night enclosure during the reintegration stage on come up. It was strategically placed to give us walking access to 4 water holes that were situated in different directions, varying between 7 and 12 kilometers from the boma. Initially, the plan was to walk to one of the water holes each day in rotation for the elephants to learn the reserve. One day, we would walk directly to a water hole for the elephants to drink and then feed in the surrounding area before returning to the boma at sunset. The next day, we would change it by feeding slowly en route towards a water hole, with the elephants drinking in the afternoon, early evening before we returned to the boma for the night. The elephants quickly showed their preference to 2 of the 4 water holes, so we simply just adjusted our routine using only those 2. After about a month, the elephants appeared very settled, so we decided to see what choices they would make if we left them out at night. However, a complication arose when we noticed one of the collars had caused a wound and needed to be removed while it healed. This decision made us return to the boma routine. In hindsight, that setback became a positive. It created an opportunity for us to disengage even further from the elephants over the next few months. By the end, we were letting the elephants out of the boma each morning and allowing them to choose where they fed and drank. We would monitor them via the collars and vehicles, and in the evenings, we would return them to the boma. The elephants were clearly showing that they were ready for the next and final stage, the rewilding. We set the 11th of December to start the stage. At sunrise on that day, on that morning, the boma gate was simply left open. From this point on, the elephants were free to make all the decisions themselves. They would be treated as wild elephants, meaning that our approach became completely hands-off, with intervention only if it was absolutely necessary. To witness the adult elephants regain their autonomy after nearly 30 years of captivity was an extraordinary privilege. It is hard to describe what that morning felt like, watching the elephants walk out of the boma for the last time as captive elephants. We did not see the elephants again for the rest of the day. At last light, we finally saw them as they came to one of the water holes to drink as wild elephant. After their first drink, the elephants covered approximately 40 kilometers over the next 48 hours, feeding and exploring the reserve as they chose before returning to water again. Our role now was to simply monitor the elephants and redirect any unwanted behaviors if they occurred, such as engaging with vehicles, people, or buildings. In reality, these behaviors were virtually non-existent, highlighting the importance of gradually disengaging from elephants through the integration process. The ease with which they adapted to life as wild elephants, although it was what I had expected, did not diminish how special the experience was. 11 years on, Chiquenia, the adult cow, has become a remarkable matriarch and also a grandmother. Chiquenia and her eldest daughter, Tidimalo, both calved in February 2019, amazingly just a week apart. Her second daughter, Wedi, followed with her first calf in 2021. Each calf was wild conceived and wild born, demonstrating how rewilded elephants can contribute meaningfully to the conservation of their species. From the onset, we knew that additional elephants would be needed to be introduced onto the reserve to ensure a more balanced and appropriate social structure was achieved. We completed this first step in September 2020 with the introduction of a family unit of 6 elephants. A beautiful scene unfolded in the early hours of the morning with the arrival of the new herd. When translocating elephants, it is always advisable to allow elephants to settle in the truck for about 30 minutes or so once at the reserve before opening the doors. This results in a much calmer and more relaxed exit. While in the truck, the new herd began rumbling. At that time, Chiquenya and her herd were approximately 6 meters away from the offloading ramp. When wild elephants are released from the truck, they typically move away fairly quickly. In this case, it did not happen. The family moved only a few hundred meters away, and we could hear them rumbling on and off for the next half hour or so. As it was still dark, we left them in peace and went and monitored them via the collar movements back at the camp. What unfolded over the next couple of hours was a powerful testament to elephants and to who they are as a species. Chiquenya, the Rewilding matriarch, had already started moving towards the new arrivals when they were still in the truck. She covered about 4 to 5 kilometers, moving towards the offloading ramp area when the new herd began moving in her direction. They met about an hour later, only a kilometer or so from the offloading ramp. Chiquenya moved directly towards the waterhole, seemingly escorting the new arrivals to water. It is known that orphaned elephants and elephants from disrupted social systems will often accept new elephants readily into their fold. Apart from the matriarch of the new herd initially moving off on her own at times to explore the reserve and find her bearings, the two groups now move largely as one herd. In 2022, 3 additional bulls were introduced to strengthen and better balance the existing bull structure. This was crucial to so excuse me. This was crucial to enable the reintegrated bulls to form a more natural fission fusion system with the breeding herds, whilst also helping to normalize their must cycles. The second reintegration I undertook involved the rewilding of 10 elephants on Shambhala Game Reserve. This group comprised of 2 family units and an adult bull. These adult elephants were also captured as youngsters during the Zimbabwe culling operations. In 2002, they were acquired from a captive elephant facility and brought to South Africa. The 2 adult elephants and the adult bull had spent more than 20 years in captivity, including 12 years being used for elephant-back safari before this rewilding took place in 2016. Rewilding was more straightforward because there was no translocation involved and therefore no need for a settling-in period at a new reserve. Although the group was larger, monitoring was simplified by the fact that there were only 3 adults, with the rest of the herd would remain with them. After the closure of the commercial operation, they remained in their stable system for only 2 weeks before being moved to a 2-hectare boma in the center of the reserve. This reintegration followed a process much like the first. Each day, the elephants moved out of the boma onto the reserve to feed and explore, while the handling team gradually reduced contact and disengaged more and more from them. I had worked out various timelines for the various stages of the project. However, the elephants had other ideas. By breaking the boma gate 2 nights in a row, they made it abundantly clear that the rewilding stage should begin sooner. So just like that, the reintegration stage was over and the rewilding stage was set to start the very next day. There was no need to continue fixing gates. The following morning, the boma gate, not broken, was opened, allowing the elephants to all the decision making. During both rewilding stages, the gates remained open and the bomas had supplementation food inside, should the elephants like to return if it made them more secure. The fact that neither herd ever returned to their boma is highly significant. So what is the take-home message from rewilding these elephants? These journeys show us that when given the opportunity, elephants choose autonomy over captivity and human control. The notion that captivity is somehow safer is the safer option often rests on the assumption that elephants prefer anthropogenic relationships. This, in my view, is flawed assumption. In June 2025, we conducted our final formal data collection session at Come Up and removed the GPS collars from both the rewilded and wild elephants after many years of monitoring. What struck me most during the final field session was that unless you knew their history, you would never guess that some of these elephants were used to give people rides. That outcome powerfully confirmed what I had long believed, that when elephants are given the opportunity, they will always choose autonomy. Given time, I believe that any captive elephant from almost any background has the capacity to be rewilded. One could possibly exclude individuals with physical injuries severe enough to compromise their ability to live successfully in a wild environment. Even so, we should give elephants the opportunity to make that choice. We greatly underestimate how well an animal can recover given time in their natural habitat with access and choice of diet and the freedom to live as they were meant to live. The photograph and picture was taken during my last data session with the rewilded herd. It is a scene that brought me immense joy. The four elephants in this picture represent three generations, a grandmother and a mother with a daughter and granddaughter. These two rewildings would have not been possible without the dedicated handlers who trusted in me that this was the best decision for the elephants. So what's next? I do know that elephants do not belong in captivity, whether it's a circus or any confined facility. The question is, how do we stop this? In the perfect world, captivity would not exist. Sadly, we are far from a perfect world, yet we must aim for that ultimate goal. To move forward, we must simply strive through the current situation and work towards ending captivity for elephants and other species. The reality is that ending captivity is a complex puzzle made up of many interconnected pieces. It's about addressing elephant suffering and exploitation. Certain key pieces need to be put in place first in order to build a foundation for real change. Education is one of the first pieces required. Without the information, expected to change because they do not fully understand the consequences of their choices and actions. Second is to align the narrative. The importance of activists, welfare organizations, animal rights groups, and advocates to align their narratives. Most messaging is not approached, they are all opposed to elephant in captivity. Whether we like it or not, the zoo world is very effective at marketing its product. Regardless of internal disagreements, they present a unified message to the public. If those working to end elephant captivity could come together and communicate the same evidence-based story, rather than pursuing personal agendas, I believe the narrative could shift strongly in our favor. At the same time, we must be realistic. Rewilding every captive elephant is likely not possible, considering where they are confined in the world. Even in range states, available space is limited. There is, however, one step that would undoubtedly move us towards the end of captivity, and that is ending captive breeding. It would take time for captivity to die out, but at least we would stop creating a new generation of elephants destined to suffer for many years to come. Finally, scientific evidence is essential in showing the negatives of captivity. This strengthens the ethical case, supports public understanding, and helps drive the legislative changes needed to ensure that what we do with elephants is ethically defensible. Most importantly, that means implementing change where we can. We must continue moving forward regardless of how big the steps are. They must just be meaningful. So folks, yeah, this brings me to the end of my presentation. As a nonprofit, we rely on funding. So if our work resonates with you, please visit our website or scan the QR code. And should you wish to support our efforts, I'd like to sincerely thank Courtney from In Defense of Animals for inviting me here today to share this work.
Thank you, Brett. That was really interesting and so inspiring because I loved when you said all elephants could benefit, all elephants, if they're given the choice, can make this decision. And, regardless, even of physical disabilities, I think you mentioned. So that's really very hopeful and inspiring. I know a lot of people have questions. I just want to start out with one of mine. Um, could you address just for a short time the special problem with male elephants in captivity? This is something that really touched me because where I live, there was an elephant who lived for almost 55 years at the zoo. And he was born there and he died there. And for 52 of his years, he was basically alone. Basically, his whole life, he was basically alone because he was considered aggressive. And he lived with like 7 other elephants on a 1.2-acre exhibit. So you can kind of imagine his frustration level. But it just seems to me there's an extra layer of suffering for male elephants in captivity. What do you feel about that? And is there any more emphasis? Well, probably not. There's not more emphasis to help male elephants be rewilded. But I'm just saying, is there a concern about that with captivity for males?
Sure. I mean, I think male elephants, bulls are generally managed a lot more heavily than females because of their must cycles. And when they come into must, they can be aggressive, and that creates management problems in captivity. And because it's a space issue, they only have one option, and that is to isolate them even further, which of course builds the frustration. So, you know, it's hard to gauge whether or not the males will suffer more than the females. It all, I think, will depend on where they are managed. But bulls definitely for the most part, will end up with a more solitary life in captivity based on their must and the more challenging they are to manage. And in captivity, and the only reason they're there for to stay in must, and that's for breeding purposes. So, again, it comes back to if, we're not breeding, then the bulls don't need to be in must. They can be treated to reduce their testosterone level, which will make their lives a lot better in that captive environment. It's not something I would recommend for wild elephants, but it's definitely something in a captive environment which can create a much better life in that captive environment for them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. That's very interesting. No, you're right. They wouldn't want to do it because they want to breed. But
Mm.
I think that's a very interesting point, at least to reduce some of the stress.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I want to give other people an opportunity to ask questions.
Sure.
So, Mary, did you have some you wanted to share with Brett?
Yeah, let's start with an easy one. First, there's this question: how can we contact the AZA to support freedom for
Oh, sorry,
elephants?
Mary. Just start again. I muted myself by mistake, or muted you by mistake.
Oh no, okay. All right, well, I'll repeat myself. This question comes from Laurel. She asks, how can we contact the AZA to support freedom for elephants?
Ooh, that will actually probably be better answered by Courtney, considering I'm not from here. But I mean, they do have channels in which you can contact them, but I think Courtney could probably answer that the best.
dan.ash@aza.org. And you can send me your email, and I will be happy to share that with you. It doesn't hurt to try. AZA is in the business of breeding. They have a thing called the Species Protection Program, and that's their Bible. And so it's a very difficult thing, but I think it's good that the more people contact them. So thank you for that suggestion and for that question.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, here's another related question that I think might also be for Courtney, but we'll see. Can zoos be legally compelled to stop breeding elephants?
Yes, they could.
That's what we're
Simple
hoping.
answer.
That's what we're trying to do, right, Courtney? There's a
So
bill basically being constructed,
we're proposing it. We're working.
proposing it.
That is part of our team. And we're trying to create a strategy for that right now. And the person that mentioned the AZA, I just want to mention that is our biggest opponent in every field when it comes to zoos. They restrict zoos from even releasing elephants to sanctuary. They threaten to take away the AZA accreditation if they even suggest that they're going to do that. So anyway, that's kind of like our biggest hurdle to deal with getting legislation.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. Legislation is the only way you're going to stop captivity.
Yeah.
That's the simple reality.
yeah,
Unless Dan Ash is hit with a lightning bolt or something and wakes up to the suffering that's going on in all those zoos. But
yeah.
part of that, yeah.
All right. I found the next question I wanted to ask you. Here it is. Does the elephant, do the elephant rewilding organizations in Africa, South Africa, work together to advance saving African elephants, i.e., Sheldrick is long established as is Reteti Elephant Sanctuary, two names I'm not familiar with, but you might be.
Yeah.
They're just talking about pooling education and experience.
Sure. So they, Sheldrick and Roteti are based up in Kenya. So we don't, being in South Africa, there's no liaison. We don't collaborate on that. And they are mainly an orphanage. Um, uh, and we are taking elephants, larger elephants for rewilding. But yes, Sheldrick's been around for many years, and Roteti's been quite a few years now. So there's collaboration amongst all elephant organizations when we dealing with certain issues. There will be collaboration, but there's no one-on-one collaboration with those two at the moment.
Hmm. Well, it's a suggestion from the crowd. So there you go.
Right.
The next question comes from another Mary. She says, is anything being done to help the Asian and Indian elephants in captivity too, similar to what you're doing in South Africa?
There is work in Asia. Asia's it's a very complex system there with the human population and how that system is set up. So there's a lot of work going on in Asia. It'd be best to reach out to various organizations out there. I'm not an expert on Asia, but there has been some rewildings, but it's not the problem is space, and where these elephants are being put. So there's a lot of work going on from the captivity perspective in terms of trying to improve that situation. And then, of course, if the opportunity arises for rewilding to take place, it would, but it becomes very complex because of the human wildlife conflict there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, of course.
I just want to add one thing to what Brett said. I just recently found out that there is a rewilding project in Laos. I don't know if you know about that one, Brett. And
I've heard a bit about it, but not a lot.
yeah, well, I just started looking into it. And then Bangladesh is looking into finding an area to rewild elephants. They haven't started yet, but they're looking for property. Um, yeah, and like Brett mentioned, there's huge problems with elephant human conflict, especially like the palm oil plantations. So yeah, they have unique problems there for sure. So next
Yeah.
question.
Sure. I think the existence of the orphanage uh, answers this question. Can baby elephants, captive or rescued orphan baby elephants, be rewilded?
They can. The process of rewilding, what is crucially important when rewilding uh, elephant calves is having a adult mother or a adult family unit in which those orphans can connect to, in which they can learn. Without it, what tends to happen is that you end up with this long, very long period of time where the orphans are under human in captivity, effectively under human care, to reach a certain age in which they can then potentially go on their own. But with that will also require a lot of learning, a lot of a large learning process that comes with that. And having adult elephants around and connected to that will make that a lot easier for the orphan. So in a perfect world, having an orphan connected to an adult and rewilding them as a herd together will be a lot more beneficial. Deal with a lot less behavioral issues later on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, here's a good question as well. How big of an obstacle for reintegration is ecotourism?
Uh, I don't believe it's a it can be a positive. One can use tourism as a way to promote rewilding, to promote and securing of land and for elephants and other wildlife. So I would see it as a positive. I think what's important when it comes to ecotourism is how it's managed and what is allowable and what isn't allowable when it comes to rewild elephants on a property. You don't want it to become a circus as such. So you would need the right protocols in place.
Right, of course. All right. Here's a good question as well. What is the level of protection that the elephants have from poachers on their new home?
Oh, where they are, good. Where they are located, there is a full anti-poaching team that works on the reserve. We are fortunate in South Africa that we don't have, and touch wood, have much of an issue yet with elephant poaching, specifically on the fair. I know up in Northern Kruger, there are definitely incidents that have taken place. So we are fortunate, but they are protected as well can be on a reserve.
That's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that there is anti-poaching uh, measures in there. That's great. Courtney, did you have more questions for Brett?
I just was wondering about this. There was a new elephant just born at the National Zoo, and the mother and the grandmother both rejected the baby. So they got an older elephant to act as kind of an auntie, and the staff has to feed her every hour, you know. So is that common? Does that ever happen in wild elephants?
No, not in wild elephant. It's common. Unfortunately, it's common in captivity, and that's due to their completely disrupted life and all the pressures that come with captivity. From a wild perspective, elephants don't very rarely reject their young, and if there is a rejection later on, it's generally due to a underlying health issue, which they somehow know, but you don't see that often at all. So it's very much a captive thing, and one's got to remember each individual. Every elephant is an individual. So in a captive place, um, certain females will have different pressures, and they will react differently to certain situations. So this mom has now rejected the calf. You might get the next mom that doesn't. So it will all vary, but it's a regular occurrence, unfortunately.
I also just wondered if it was have to do with her age. She was only 10, I think, when she had a baby. So I don't know if that affects it or not.
Well, we must remember that females grow up through in a herd environment. So from a young age, young females, they become big sister and they learn and they see it happening within the herd. They see the adult elephants, the older females giving birth, and they go and they learn what's happening through that whole system. So when they come to give birth for the first time, they have a huge support group around them. All the adult females, the matriarch, the adults, the experienced moms are right there. So if she once she gives birth, you're a lot of time on your first birth for a female in the wild. They all automatically step back because it's a huge stressful situation for them. And the other moms are there to help with the baby, and then she'll calm down and come back and take over and move on from there. So then they don't have that support structure in a captive environment. That doesn't exist. So that's where your problem lies, is
Mhm.
captivity.
They're all alone. Just
Yep.
giving birth in captivity means being completely alone without your social support group. That's so sad. Um, so this next question is about what we can do to help this movement in the US and in Africa.
So how do we, yeah, just yeah, supporting organizations that are fighting the fight against captivity, and I think, as I said earlier, education is a big one, and I think if we can start stopping people from going to zoos. So educating people so they understand what the challenges are with captivity, so they don't actually support these places financially. And yeah, just get involved with organizations that are trying to make the change. And just word of mouth is a big one. Whenever you're sitting around having a cold beer with your friends, talk about it and get everybody on the same page.
Mm. That's something that requires some bravery to bring up difficult topics with your friends, but it's true. It can make a difference. And also,
Okay.
we have our alert that Lisa just put in the chat for us. Thank you, Lisa. All right, let's see. There's a lot of talk in the chat if you want to look. Not many questions, but a lot of support. A lot of people saying this is really great. Um, and yeah, there's also talk about the different elephants that we've been advocating for. There's Billy and Tina, who had been moved from uh, the LA Zoo to Tulsa in the middle of the night. Um, we have our good Lucy in Edmonton that we are always advocating for. We can put her alert in the chat as well. Um,
Yeah, I think what's very important as well when you're dealing with uh, trying to advocate for elephants to be moved out of captive situations into sanctuary, or into better captivity. Um, we need to ensure that there's space for that to occur. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at very carefully in terms of what space is available. If you've got 20 elephants that are available to be removed from a zoo and put into sanctuary, where are they going? So, you know, um, there needs to be space for that to happen. Otherwise, you're not really benefiting the elephants if you can't move them to the sanctuary that has the space for them. So that's something that probably needs to be worked on in the US, and probably in Europe in a massive way as well, depending on the number of elephants that are going to become available from zoos to be able to move to sanctuary. And yeah, they need this space in sanctuary for it to work properly. Otherwise, there's no real benefit.
yeah, exactly. But then it becomes a puzzle of how do we promote that? How do we make it happen? How do we facilitate it, right? How do we create
Exactly.
more of that ability in the US and Europe and Africa and also in Asia, right? Because if we're also going to try and help Indian and Asian elephants, right? Then that's another space too.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done, and I think I think if we try and we're not going to be able to fix everything, but different entities and different groups must um, break you must break it down into bite-sized chunks, and
Mm.
the key is, if you can slow captivity down, it's going to improve everything else on the other side. So
I really like your approach. It sounds like we'll get there, you know? It feels like there's a way forward. So just wanted to let everybody know, for Billy and Tina, we got some celebrities to speak out for Billy and Tina. That was Samuel L. Jackson. Oh, I also wanted to ask you, Brett, about the babies that were born, the calves that were born wild. Um, they don't have any of the diseases, right? The EEHV. I don't know, remember what it stands for. That is so common in captivity, I imagine.
no, we don't have any of that. That's predominantly something that's on this part of the world, from captivity,
Crazy.
and more so with Asian elephants than Africans. It is starting to progress into the Africans in a captive environment in the
Uh,
US. But back in South Africa, we didn't have any issue. We don't have any of those issues with EHV at all.
That's really good. I'm very glad to hear that. There is
um,
a recommendation that you should make a documentary. Go ahead,
Yes,
Courtney.
in his spare
we would
time.
like to. We are speaking with a few people. So it is on the cards. Um, uh, it just time is always the problem.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Mary, I think there was a question from Carol Buckley. Would you see if you can find that? I just briefly saw it as it scrolled by.
Yeah, that was from Carol. She's the one who suggested making a
Okay, yeah,
documentary.
I see it there.
Oh, that was her suggestion? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got it. Well, Carol, we're gonna hire you. Just go over there to South Africa. Carol does a lot of work in Nepal.
Yes, I know Carol. I know
Oh, do
Carol.
you? Uh-huh. Great.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Well, movies
yeah.
do help. Films do help for sure.
No, they do. They do.
A
They
lot.
do.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think Lisa was listing a lot of places for people in the audience to learn about what you can do. You can also go to our Elephants Page campaign on our website. We have a lot of elephant pages, and we
Mhm.
have the 10 worst zoos. We always need volunteers for the 10 worst zoos, by the way, to go to these zoos and get photos and videos. Very important. We have a campaign to contact the media for elephants. We have a lot of information about breeding and all of our alerts, which we hope you'll sign to help free different elephants. And so just use that as a resource to continue your information gathering and to see other ways you can help. And we do appreciate the question about that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to put the link to all of our elephant alerts so you can look at all of them in the chat. There it is. Someone took it already. It was, so you can go in and see all of the different elephants that are living in captivity that we have alerts for, who we are trying to convince them to let them go to sanctuary. So there are
Great.
many. Please take a look.
And that's, as Brett pointed out, you have to start the process of ending the breeding, because otherwise it's just a continual problem that never ends. Because unfortunately, a lot of times elephants do live a long life in zoos. And that's
they
that's
do.
really
Yeah.
not a good situation, because they all develop arthritis and foot disease, and just the horrible psychological damage. What really gets to me personally. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
No, it is. I mean, the sanctuary side of things is I think that's something that, uh, like yourselves, Courtney, and all the other organizations that are fighting this fight here, is to get the sanctuaries on board, and then are they able to take more elephants? I think that's a very important question that should be answered, because it doesn't matter how much campaigning you do, if you've got nowhere to put them. And so I think it's something which which should be looked at very carefully and see how one is able to expand or create a new sanctuary, and doing it in systems where you can actually take on more elephant properly. It doesn't help for getting a home for example, Billy, if he's got nowhere to go. If a zoo says, please take my elephant, but you've got nowhere to put him, it becomes a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I know that for male elephants, from what I understand, it takes more money to build the fences.
It's expensive. I mean, yeah, building a sanctuary is expensive, but there are definitely ways in which one can create the systems uh, a lot cheaper than the current systems are built. Through correct fencing and stuff, one can do it can do it really well. It costs money. At the end of the day, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it costs more here than it does in Africa. It just
Probably.
everything costs more here.
Awesome. Yeah. We got one more question that came in. Do any of the elephants that you've worked with ever attach to the handlers when they're living in captivity? Or do they find any peace in that?
Sure, it's a great question, and I think that regardless of captivity, there are definitely relationships that are built between people and elephants. I mean, I worked with my elephants. I had an amazing relationship with Chiquenia, who is with all, specifically Chiquenia, the female. So yes, you do get relationships, and that needs to be respected in when you are doing a reintegration program, and that you disengage slowly because just not because it's necessarily about the person, but it's about what they're looking to do. And if you cut off that system off completely very quickly, you can create an unnecessary trauma and stress for that animal. So you want to disengage slowly, so that if there is a relationship with a keeper or a handler and an elephant, you just when you disengage, you do that through a slow process so that the transition is nice and smooth, and you can then carry on. That elephant can carry on back into the wild.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Brett. This is, I don't know how to say how excited I am that this is a thing that's happening and that you succeeded. I don't know how to explain how excited I am about it.
It's truly remarkable. And we have some elephant experts in the midst here who have been working on campaigns for elephants for years, who are joining this webinar right now, who are tuning in. And so we're just so grateful to everyone for being part of this. And was wondering if you might take one moment to talk about some of the legislative efforts that you're planning to ban breeding.
Yeah, we just got, I think I could speak to that, Brett, unless there's something you want to add to it right now. Are you muted, Brett?
No. The legislative process. I probably not the right person to talk to that. I don't know enough about it. But I think as that comes along, as we move along, that's where Courtney from Non-Human Rights, they also part of it. But maybe Courtney, you can share a little bit more on the legislative side.
Yeah, basically, we just I've had a few meetings, and we're right now deciding where we want to do the ban. We decided to use a statewide ban right now. one of the things we have to deal with, as I mentioned earlier, is the strong opposition from the AZA. So we have to pick a place where we're going to have the least amount of opposition to start with, because we don't want to lose our first battle right out of the gate, right? So that is where we're starting. We have a team. Brett is on the team. We have other organizations like Born Free, Animal Defenders International, um, World Animal Protection that have joined us. So we're going to work together and put our heads together to try to find the best place and then to initiate the legislation. So we have attorneys on our team, and that's what you need to create craft legislation. So that's where we are right now. We will keep you all posted as to any progress and updates to that.
Thank you so much, Courtney. This is boots on the ground for us at In Defense of Animals. We want to share with all of you that we are working to make lasting change for elephants in this country, in the United States at least. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Special thanks to Brett for coordinating this with your journey to the US and for sharing your work with us is so inspiring. Probably the best news for elephants we've had in a long time. And Courtney for hosting and for bringing all of this wonderful content to us at In Defense of Animals. We're so excited for your leadership. And Mary, wow, the hostess with the mostest. Thank you for guiding us through the chat and also for helping with some of the screen sharing. This is all part of the picture. It takes a team to get one of these, get all this information out to all of you. And we're just so thrilled that you were able to join us today on behalf of In Defense of Animals. We are very grateful to all of you. Please stay tuned to our programs for more. And
And everyone will get the link to the recording, correct, Lisa?
yes, exactly. The link to the recording will be posted on the In Defense of Animals YouTube channel, on our Fireside Chat playlist, also our Expert Activist playlist. So you'll be able to find it. And I included a link in the chat. And anyone who's joined us via Zoom, you will also get the link to this recording with all the chat. And you'll also get the YouTube to share with others. So we are very grateful to you, and we want you to be able to access this information.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brett. It was wonderful hearing your presentation and your successes.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you to, especially to Brett for having all of this incredible success. And we are all sharing and celebrating with you. So thank you all, everybody.
Great.
Have a wonderful
Have a
evening.
good evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.